That is, the Barbican is responsible, in every sense, artistically and financially, for 52 weeks of theatre in the main house and the experimental stage, for about 2/3 of the concerts in the concert hall, for all the visual arts, and for all the cinemas. And each art form is characterized to a greater or lesser degree, first by a certain commitment to the great works of the past, to the continuum of the great canon of achievement, but also to a major involvement in experimental or innovative work of the present day, often international, often working across the art forms, and together, when these criteria are applied across all the art forms, they make it easy to recognize that the Barbican delivers a coherent and distinctive arts policy. But it took a long time to do, a decade. Now, you may well ask, do you want an arts policy? Do you need an arts policy? Can you perhaps even afford one? Who, you are probably saying, will our arts partners be? Will they be Polish, entirely national, regional, or how international will they be? When will you take a lead in devising projects? And when will you join in projects devised and originated by others? There's no shame in that, in partnership. And will all this guide the decisions you make in all the art forms, or will the policy be different for each? How distinctive will it be? What will it look like in 3 to 5 years' time, which is, after all, the normal planning horizon? At least 3 years for theatre, 5 years for classical music. Will it fit into the vision? These are difficult questions, but a good answer to them will certainly deliver results. Now, as important as the creation of an artistic policy is the control of the budget. This may be obvious sounding, but it's not obvious to some arts organizations in practice. What do I mean by this? First, if the arts organization does not keep control over costs and income, somebody else will do it for you, and you'll have nobody to blame but yourselves. Second, be honest, be realistic about your income projections. Don't decide how much you want to spend on the arts first, and then balance the budget by padding it out with unlikely forecasts. You would be surprised, or maybe not, by how many organizations use the income lines as balancing items to make the numbers add up. I've seen too many organizations which put in overambitious and highly unrealistic forecasts for earnings from bars, catering, commercial hire, and private and corporate support. And they then allocate their spending on the assumption of what are inflated income targets, or what they hope to earn. The inevitable and resulting deficit is embarrassing, largely predictable, and very painful to put right. Don't get yourself into such a situation, is advice that I always give. Because if any organization does, then you only have yourselves to blame. And incidentally, there is no contradiction between being artistically creative and managerially responsible and efficient. The arts are not a business, but they must be business-like, using available managerial, financial, and business skills to deliver the best quality of arts available. I know for a fact that the City of London would not have continued funding the Barbican at the levels it did if we hadn't shown that we used the money they gave us, not to mention the money we earned, in the most efficient way. Running budget deficits is not an artistic policy. It undermines it. Financial responsibility is not a precondition. Financial responsibility, rather, is the precondition for being able to claim artistic freedom. This is a lesson which it has taken major British arts organisations 10 to 15 years to learn, but I think that it is now learned. But there were some very painful moments en route. Now, you will have noticed that I referred to difficulties of collaboration and artistic cooperation between those who run the venue, the building, the Barbican, and those who provided the arts within it. In our case, the most difficult problems were with the Royal Shakespeare Company and the London Symphony Orchestra. Now, the problem was solved first by the physical departure from the Barbican of the Royal Shakespeare Company. They just decided they wanted to perform elsewhere, and unfortunately with minimal warning they left. And while this seemed a potentially deadly blow when it was first announced, it rapidly became a major opportunity for us to create our own artistic programming and policy. This added responsibility, including, of course, much greater financial risk at the box office, because everything we put on at the box office is a direct risk to us. The visiting company doesn't carry it. The Barbican does. So this complicates the finances very, very considerably. But it means that you can present programming which is consistent with the overall vision. And once we were in that position, we could create partnerships with theatre companies, orchestras, whose work fitted in with our vision and to their and our benefit. In the case of the concert hall, we simply built a new relationship with the London Symphony Orchestra as they learned and understood that our policy of presenting high-class international performers was not a challenge to them, which at first they thought it was, but in fact a validation of the quality and endorsement that they stood for. A great orchestra, we said, should not be surrounded by second-rate events. And that was what happened in the first decade of the Barbican's life, and now the overall standards of music in the concert hall are those of the London Symphony Orchestra, and the partnership can now work very well. Of course, many venues are shared by several independent institutions. They may have quite extensive rights over the use of space, over their programming and their artistic policies. They may, rightly, treasure their independence of policy and practice. My only observation on that is this. Audiences will assume that everything presented in an arts venue is a part of that venue, and it's not just a resident paying rent to a landlord. That's your business. That's not the business that the audience is interested in. And they are certainly not interested in the border demarcation squabbles between the managers of the venue, the building, and the resident companies or organizations. There are huge disadvantages if inevitable tensions are not addressed, and there are huge advantages to finding ways of working together while keeping the proper artistic areas of freedom intact.